Hi, welcome to Ready Retro Racing. We're going to be having a look at it's the start of the Goodwood Festival this week. So I've had a little bit of a start on looking into Tuesday's card. There's a couple of races I wanted to preview in a bit more detail, but at this stage I think it's probably only maybe one bet. I think the first day looks quite difficult, and we're not sure on what kind of weather we're going to get. Goodwood's a bit of a tricky course at the best of times. It's quite up and down and twisty and turny, and so Goodwood on soft ground, if we do get a bit of rain, can be quite a difficult place. It can be difficult even seeing the races. So as to how this week pans out, I'm not too sure really. Probably a good starting point, I think, is I had a look at my spreadsheet, because I know that generally Goodwood isn't a track I do that well on. So I had a quick look just to see how I've actually been performing since June 2020. And just to add a bit of context to this and to maybe make everyone a little bit cautious, it's my worst performing track. So since June 2020, I am £1,453 down at Goodwood. So it could be a week of treading a bit carefully. It's questionable ground, not a track I have a great record at, and it already looks quite tight competitive racing. Anyway, let's move on to a couple of the races that I did want to look at. We'll start with the race where I probably am going to put up a selection looking at it, and it's actually the last race, the 5:35. Good little fillies handicap, very, very tight, very kind of tricky. Draw can have a bit of an impact here as well. You're a bit of a hostage to fortune at Goodwood. I went through this race. I spent a bit of time on this race actually, and the more I looked at it, I mean, you've got 11 3-year-olds taking on two older mares, but it's actually one of the older mares I'm probably interested in the most, and it would be Crazy Look for Rod Millman and ridden by Oisin Murphy. Now, I think the first thing that kind of caught my eye with this horse is I thought it ran really well on first run this season at Newbury, and I don't think it really wants soft ground. I think it can handle soft ground, but I think it wants slightly better ground. That's why I'm hoping it isn't too soft here on Tuesday. But I thought it ran much better than its performance looked. It was 8 for 15 off a mark of 82, but I actually marked that run up a bit, to the extent that I did go and back it next time at Windsor. And she was just touched off that day. I thought she was a little bit unlucky. That form hasn't worked out particularly well, to be honest. It's not form that you can get overexcited about. And then she disappointed next time at York. She didn't run a very good race. So I know I'm not building the most strongest of case for this horse at this moment in time. But I think where we've got some angles are, for a start, I like the jockey and trainer combination. Now, Oisin Murphy does go down there and ride out at Rod Millman's when he gets opportunities. So I know the Rod Millman team are a big fan of Oisin Murphy, and they he's obviously not always available to ride for them, being a smaller stable. But whenever they get the opportunity to put Oisin Murphy on one, they tend to take that opportunity, and it tends to be something what they think is going to run well. So I think that's a good kind of combination for it. If you actually look through her form in her last two seasons, not including her 3 runs this season, she does tend to quite often, the last 2021 and 2022 have followed quite a similar pattern in terms of that. She starts off running okay early in March and May, but by the time she actually seems to peak in the season, tends to be in the late June and July and then August months. So we're approaching that kind of period now. I mean, she did that in season 2021. So she went and kind of won late May, had a bit of a break and threw out in July. But her best RPRs certainly were through that peak summer period of July to August. And then she actually followed that pattern again last year in 2022, where she started off running, she ran okay early on, but then really seemed to hit a stride and hit a peak around late June, again through till probably late July. She was running RPRs of 89, 90, 90, and then she ran a 78 at Goodwood, but she had no luck in running that day. You can kind of scrap that as an actual kind of performance of what she did on the day. So I just wonder whether she is the kind of mare who likes these kind of peak summer months, and maybe that's ground related, and she might not be getting that here because, as I say, there is a bit of rain around. It's good to soft already, but I thought it was worth taking a chance on that, and she's still well handicapped if you look at what she's done in those peak summer months. Winning off 81, winning off 83. Running well behind horses like Gale Force Meyer off 80. I mean, she's only on 82 here, so she's not badly handicapped at all. And then actually, if you look at her course form as well, although she hasn't won here at Goodwood, she's run a number of good races. She was not beaten far off 83 with Oliver Searle, claiming 7 that day. Maybe a bit of a questionable ride when you look at the video on that one. Not questionable, but he seemed to be struggling a bit with her. I thought she was probably a little bit unlucky that day. She was definitely unlucky when she came 9th here, so again you can scrap that run. And then her other 2 runs here are both coming second, not beaten too far by Lovely Breeze on soft ground, and second in heavy ground, which again I don't think are kind of what she wants. So although her form here looks only average at best, I suspect she probably doesn't mind this track, and it's probably a little bit better than she looks. Now, I can't say I've got her massively different in the market to where she is, if I'm honest. I've got her in at 9-1. I think she's about 10s. So it's quite tight with where I am. I normally like to look for a bigger differential in that. Certainly a bigger differential in percentage terms, and we haven't really got that. We've got a 1% differential. But I suspect these markets, because they've been priced quite early as well, they're quite high on the margins. I mean, there's a couple of these races that I've worked out, and using Bet365 as an example, they're about 130, 135% margin book on these races. So these markets will move a little bit over the next kind of day or so. I'm probably going to take a chance in her tomorrow each way. 10s would be as low as I'd go. I'd probably wait and see if I can get a bit more. The fact that there's a lot of 3-year-olds in here, she might end up getting a bit overlooked. They might think, that you want to be with the young, improving 3-year-olds and ignore the older mare possibly. So 10s would be the absolute minimum. I'd probably be wanting more like 12 really. But I think she's worth an each way play in this tomorrow, and let's hope for a bit of luck in running. I mean, looking at the others, I think Kid's High the favourite's too short, but I can see why it's favourite. Funny Story's got a really likeable profile. I think it's probably the best horse in here, which obviously top of the handicap doesn't tell you anything you probably don't know already, but probably hasn't really shown any form on soft, so that might be a question mark if it is a bit soft. You've got to respect Sophia Starlight. She's done nothing but improve all season, and she's likely to run a race, and she's possibly quite well drawn if they want to come up the near side rail. So you would have to respect her. The other one who caught my eye a little bit and might be a little bit overpriced is Mini Tonka. She's been quite highly tried in group races. She tends to run the same race quite often, I find. She travels well, and then is in around about 4th and really doesn't seem to move from that position in many ways. But she's not had too many chances down at handicap company, so she was one I did look at a couple of times, but again, the soft ground, she'd quite a nice moving filly, so I wasn't sure that if it was a bit soft, if she'd really want that. But yeah, Crazy Look would be the one. So moving on, the other race I did have a good look at was the 250 on the card, really good handicap. But I think a lot of the form lines here cluster around horses who've been running against each other, and I had this market very similar in terms of standing to what's out there. As I say, I was looking at Bet365, I think they're about 130% on this at the minute, so they're a bit short on everything than what I've got. But the kind of standing and the makeup of the market, it follows a very similar pattern. I had Milbosk and Lord Protector as joint favourites. Milbosk is clearly well handicapped. You suspect the Haggish Yard are still getting to know this kind of horse a little bit after having it from France. You can mark up its 2 runs this season, I think. That run at Lingfield, it got carried wide. And he stayed on well, and then last time at York it was drawn 20, probably missed it half a step out of the stalls and had no choice but to take it back, and found itself a long way behind, staying on through the field. So there's no doubt this horse is well handicapped. You know, he's got French Group 1 form in there, and only beaten 2 or 3 lengths by St Mark's Basilica a couple of years back. So yeah, it's going to be dangerous. Stall 10 is probably okay. I think they'll try and get her out. They'll try and get it out and ride it a bit more handily this time. And he's going to be a real threat tomorrow, but the market already knows this. And, you know, I had it 6-1 joint with Lord Protector, and I think he's a little bit short of that in a minute. Lord Protector is interesting. I think maybe a little bit unusual for a flat horse in terms of it seems to have a preference way of going. You tend to find that a bit more kind of prominent in jump racing, really. But if you actually look at this form, when this horse runs left-handed, it seems to get beat a long way in nearly every left-handed race it runs in, and just doesn't run its race. However, when you look at this horse right-handed, it seems a completely different animal. So, you know, it's got, I think it's 4 or 5 wins right-handed. So yeah, it just seems to be right-handed, seems to be what this horse wants. I mean, he's run really well in his last 2 at Sandown. He probably is going to need a career best here off 98, but you go back to this horse as a 3-year-old and it kind of suggested it was going to be possibly listed class, maybe could even progress into Group 3 class at the time. It hasn't quite done that, probably because it's ended up going left-handed a number of times possibly. But in terms of its mark, it's not actually that much higher than it was then, really. So again, I think he's going to run his race. Stall 5 is probably quite useful. Ross Ryan again will probably pop it out and have it sat there in 3rd or 4th tracking. It's possibly going to get more of the run of the race than Mil Bosque, but I think Mil Bosque is probably the better horse and with more scope. Haunted Dream you have to throw into the mix. I mean, he's run some cracking races this season and he's got form that ties in with these as well. Stall 1 I wasn't in love with, but yeah, it's I think the race really does frame around these kind of form lines with these 3, and maybe Paradias. Eagles Way's in there and is progressive, and I thought the track might be a little bit sharp for Eagles Way. So yeah, I'm not going to put up a bet in this at the minute. I'll wait and see how the market kind of looks closer to the time. As I say, Lord Protector and Mil Bosque would be the 2. I kind of really had it between the most. I think if we get to the market and Mil Bosque is 5-1 and Lord Protector's maybe 8-1, something like that, I'd probably back Lord Protector. But a bit of license on this one really, and wait for them to see how the market kind of shapes this race up. The 2 down the bottom, Mahaba the Champ and Moktasab, maybe not too badly handicapped and could run the race, but yeah, I prefer, as I said, I prefer the form lines of the other 2 or 3 ahead of them really. So yeah, I think with that one we're going to have to leave that race and wait to see how it pans out at the time on the market. So we'll leave it there for now. Yeah, unfortunately nothing of too much clarity here, but maybe there's a little bit of caution on my behalf with it being Goodwood. But I think the last race, crazy luck. I think it would really be a minimum of 10-1, but I think 12-1 or better if it does get slightly ignored. I'd be interested in playing her each way. Yeah, so there'll be more previews obviously later this week. Quite how in depth I'll go with some of the Goodwood races, I'm not sure in terms of from a betting perspective, but we'll see how it turns out. All right, thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye bye.